What's up everyone, we're back at it again. My name is Brad and welcome back to my channel. Today what I want to do is I want to give you the secret tips and tricks of what it takes to get your thin looking, spindly looking rubber tree trunk to be much thicker to allow for it to not only support itself, but to give you a very beautiful tree structure. Alright, let's get into it. So you just got your brand new rubber tree and really any kind of ficus supplies. You inspect it and you're like, man, this tree is going to be absolutely beautiful in a couple of years. But I noticed that my stem is a bit spindly, and even though it's a foot tall, I still want to make sure that I give it the best chance to have the best support possible. In fact, instead of having a spindly stem and trunk like this, I want it to look like this. This is my Ficus elastica taniki, and it's been growing for a couple of years. In the time that it's grown, it's also developed this nice, beautiful trunk. I'm going to give you the secret tips and tricks on how to get a nice, thick trunk for your plant too. One of the most popular misconceptions of getting a nice, thick trunk is that it's just a matter of time. This is absolutely not true. If you want to get a thick trunk, there are a couple of things that you need to do, and there are some things that you absolutely should not do. Let's start off with the one thing that you absolutely should not do when you want to get a nice, big, thick trunk. The one thing that you see that is missing from both of these trees, so this is my Ficus moonshine and this is my Ficus elastica taniki, is it doesn't have any kind of support. Having an artificial support is something that you absolutely do not want if you want to have a nice, thick trunk. All right, so your tree is indoors, and we've already talked about what you absolutely should not do, but you still have a beautiful, small little rubber tree that you want to one day hope that it gets to be much larger. What can you do? So what you need to do is you need to provide some kind of stimulation for the trunk itself. Oftentimes, well, you have to remember too, when these trees are outside, what is happening when they are outside? Well, they're getting wind. And that wind is enough to stimulate the trunk to become much larger. This is why a false support also prohibits the strengthening of the trunk itself. If you have that false support, and if that false support is staked too tightly, what's going to happen is it's going to prevent any kind of movement in the trunk itself. If you have no movement, or without movement, you will not get a sturdy trunk like this. So how can you go about giving your plant movement? Movement is the most important thing that you can do for your tree if you want it to develop a thick trunk like this. This is because by moving your tree, it stimulates the trunk, and by stimulating the trunk, in time, you get a nice thick trunk like this. If you like videos like this and want to continue to see more videos about houseplant tips and tricks, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. It's totally free and would mean a lot. Now, let's get back into the video. You have to remember that in the wild, these trees are exposed to all sorts of elements. And on top of the elements, it's also exposed to wind. When your tree is exposed to this wind, what is happening is, as you can see, your tree moves and sways back and forth like so. If you have any kind of artificial support, especially one that is very staked tightly onto the tree itself, it prevents this movement from occurring. Instead, what's happening is your stake is doing the movement and not the trunk itself. If you want to get a nice thick trunk like this, please get rid of that artificial stake support or whatever kind of system that you have that's trying to get your tree or keep your tree upright. What you want to do is you want to periodically, if your tree is growing inside and not outside, you want to make sure that you shake your tree. A movement such as this is all that your tree needs in order to help develop that thick trunk that we've been talking about. Do this for a few minutes a day for about a month or so, and you'll notice that the integrity and the stiffness of your trunk will slowly develop. Your tree will become more rigid, and there will be no need for any kind of support system whatsoever because your tree is able to support the weight of its branching structure by itself. Another thing that you want to keep in mind is that your tree needs to be fed. By feeding your tree, you're giving it the necessary nutrients that it needs in order to develop a thick trunk such as this. As you can see, This trunk is becoming very woody, which is what we want to see. And part of that woodiness has to do with the type of nutrients that I am feeding this tree. I feed this tree a 3:1:2 NPK ratio fertilizer about once a month. And when it's outside, I would feed it about once every 2 weeks. So those are the steps that you need to take in order to get your finicky looking rubber tree to have a nice thick trunk. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. With that being said, my name is Brad. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.